always wanted more. Pile drivers and pinfalls, a historical ride beyond the ropes with nothing to hide.
And we are back with a brand new episode, and a very special episode this week. Hello, folks. I'm Joe Monroe. As with me, as always, the wizard himself, the Wizard CZ. And today we have a very special guest. Yes, I know we don't do interviews that often, but I could not resist doing an interview with this gentleman over just right at 53 years. We talked off camera. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Herb Simmons.
Hey guys, thanks a lot. I appreciate you making time to have me come on and talk about something that is my passion for all these years. I'm 73 years old, and I've had a long passion for what we call professional wrestling.
There's no way you're 73, Herb. Come on.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, okay. I'll be 73 in July, so
okay.
I told a little story there, but I'm in that year of 73. Yes, sir.
Wow. Well, you don't look it.
Well, thank you.
Well, let's go ahead and let's get started. First question we like to ask on here: what got you in this crazy sport we love called professional wrestling?
Well, it's I call it a disease that we all inherited at a young age. And we just got so entrenched in it. And that's what happened to me. I became a fan, like yous became a fan. That's why you're doing what you're doing. And that's the easiest question to answer is because, my mom was my partner. My brothers and sisters, they weren't into the wrestling. They may watch it when it was on, but my mom and I mean, we were glued to the TV. Back then, of course, I always tell the little story that back in the day, you didn't have a lot of TV to watch. We watched wrestling, roller derby, and the Three Stooges, and I watched all three of them, and I still watch it to the day. So you grew up on those, but man, I was, we'd have a little black and white 12-inch TV with the rabbit ears. And the program out of St. Louis, Missouri, Wrestling at the Chase, was what I grew up on, and that's why you'll see our promos that we do. We started the St. Louis Wrestling Hall of Fame. I had that honor of sitting under the learning tree of the late great Sam Muchnick, the president of the National Wrestling Alliance, and my great friend who's not with us anymore, Larry Matasek, who was his protege. So it's been one hell of a ride.
So you said Sam Muchnick. That gets me to a good my next question. What was it like hanging out with Sam Muchnick? Basically, 100% a legend in this business.
It was. I've referred to him as God. I mean, my first encounter with him, it wasn't the first encounter. It was my first sit down at having a meal with him, which I didn't know I was going to. Larry told me, he said, "Come on, Dad's going to drop us off, and we're going to have dinner." And it was at the Fairmount Park Racetrack in Collinsville, Illinois. Sam used to like to go to the restaurant there, and they had great steaks. And so, I mean, I'd seen him. I'd been at the office in there, but I was kind of shy back then. And, I was a sponge. I was just soaking everything up, all the knowledge I could. And but that first night I got to sit down at the table with him. And I thought, man, I'm sitting here with God, royalty, you name it. I mean, this is a guy that brings these big professional wrestlers, Cowboy Bob Ellis, Johnny Valentine, Luthez, and the list goes on and on. But that was I'll never forget that night. And then that was the night he basically told me to took a steak knife, and I'd heard all the horrors about the business, how it was cutthroat. But he took that steak knife and he held it up to his ear, and he says, "If you keep these open," and he pointed to his lips and said, "You keep these closed, you'll go a long way in this business." But when he had that steak knife, I thought, "Oh man, maybe all the rumors I heard is true," And because I told him I didn't want to be a wrestler, I said, I want to know I want to know all the ins and outs of the behind the curtains, the Wizard of the Oz, and I tell people to this day, just because that curtain's been pulled back doesn't mean we have to keep squeezing a toothpaste tube. People refer to it as, "Oh yeah, the toothpaste is out of the tube," but I don't have to keep squeezing it. So, and my fans, they love it. They love our storylines, and I think that's why they keep coming back.
Okay.
You mentioned the curtain being open a little bit. Before I ask my question, for those of you who are noticing the QR code up in the corner, that's something that we don't always do. That is the link to see the card subject to change interview with Herb earlier this week. So if you want to check that out, I'll get all the Herb you can. He's great talk. And I'm going to ask you, you know, we're talking about the curtain being pulled open a little bit. What is your thought on that, on how everybody now has a peek behind that curtain?
Well, I mean, the curtain has been pulled back. There's no doubt about it. The toothpaste is out of the tube. But again, wrestling fans are the greatest fans ever. And I know every promoter says that, but I'm telling you, I speak it from a voice of experience to the fact that if you give our fans the good product, they don't care. It's like going to a movie. You know, they see the premiere of a movie, a new one coming out, and they watch the trailer of it. They don't just see the trailer and say, oh, okay, I like it. I like what I'm seeing. But, you know, it's all theatrical. It's all BS. What do? They go to the local theaters and they buy the tickets and they go in and they sit for 2.5, 3 hours and they get entertained. And, you know, that's what I've always said. For 2.5, 3 hours, I'm going to take you in a world of disbelief. I'm going to make you forget about the price of the gasoline nowadays and the price of milk and eggs. Now, the reality of that is you have to come back to reality. But for that 2.5, 3 hours, I'm going to take you on a trip that you're going to sit there and you're going to cheer the good guys, boo the bad guys. You're going to be sitting next to people you've just met, or you may be sitting next to your family members that you didn't know showed up. Because in this business, believe it or not, there's what's called closet fans. And those are the fans that, I don't want to go see that fake stuff. And, you know, I remember we walked into another restaurant one time with Sam, and a gentleman sitting at the table said, "Hey, Sam, I haven't seen you in a long time. You still doing that fake stuff, that stuff called wrestling?" And Sam said, "Yeah." He said, "It's in my blood. I can't get out of it." And the guy says, "Hey, does the Bulldog Bob Brown still come out and cover his ears up when the fans are barking at him?" And yeah. He said he's got bad ear problems. We went over and sat down, and Sam said, "That's the first time I heard the phrase closet fan, because how else would he know Bob Brown was covering his ears up unless he's tuning in every week and watching it?" So, and that's nothing derogatory about the fans. I mean, I'm not trying to attack their intelligence. I mean, I said that the wrestling fans are the greatest of ever. I mean, and they know, I mean, they'll sit there for 2.5 hours and boo the villains, and then they want to stand around and get their autographs from them. And that's what's great about it. And yeah, with the curtain being pulled back, I mean, you know, it was going to happen sooner or later. I mean, it's no different than what Eddie Mansfield, and I know you've heard that whole story, how it all got started. And I mean, great guy. I talk to Eddie all the time myself. And but look what Vince did to the business. You know, not only did he pull the curtain back, he took the wizard and threw him out with the bathwater, you know, the Wizard of Oz. So, and again, you know, that's history there as far as what happened, but fans are still showing up watching it, you know, whether it be AEW, TNA, NWA, SICW. Wrestling fans love wrestling. And it's like a roller coaster. I've seen it happen over 53 years. It goes up and down. We're at a high point now with professional wrestling. The only bad part about that is when you reach the top of that roller coaster, can't go no farther up. So we better enjoy it while we can.
So let's get back to that dinner that you had. Was that when that was your introduction to the business itself right there?
No, I'd actually been kind of dabbling around in it on the independent side, you know, doing some shows over in Missouri. First show I had was in Malden, Missouri back in 1973. But it was you know, I was just a young, snotty-nosed kid wanting to know more about what I really enjoyed watching on TV. And then when I met my friend, Larry Matisek, who we shared some other common bonds in life, you know, he went to work for Sam when he was 16 years old and never had another job. if he got one, he'd quit it because he couldn't get off on a Friday night when they were going to have matches at the Kiel Auditorium. And he said, man, I got to be at wrestling. And when he went to college, I mean, he came back from college because he couldn't be there on a Friday night to watch wrestling. But, he went on to write 5-6 different books of the business and became Sam's right-hand person. Turned out to be the voice of St. Louis wrestling that brought all that enthusiasm into our TV sets. And like I said, him and I become great friends. And I miss him every day. I got a poster of him here in the house, and him and Sam Muchnick and Bruiser Brody, the three that I really give credit to for really getting SICW known around the world.
Herb, I want to ask you to play off of that a little bit. Under the tutelage of Sam Muchnick, what's the best advice that Sam ever gave you?
A couple of them. Like I said earlier, keep your ears open and your mouth shut, and you'll go a long way in the business. And that was probably the most rewarding thing he told me, because I think that's what's made me be so receptive by the boys and the girls. Like I said, when you can pick up a phone and call when Jack Briscoe was still alive, or his brother now, Jerry, or JBL, or Cactus Jack, Mick Foley, when you can pick up the phone and call a Teddy Long and people like that, and they take your call, you don't have to go through an agent like some promotions do. He opened those doors. And of course, then my job was to make sure that door didn't get closed. And I think I've done that pretty well. I don't brag a lot about it, but it's facts is facts. You don't do something for this long if you made those mistakes. Now, have I made mistakes along the way? Have I booked the wrong people sometimes? We all have done that. But for the most part of it, I always reflect back to that saying that he told me. And then Bruiser Brody told me one time, he said, don't let the boys take your kindness as weakness. So I've had to play hardball with some that thought that I was a young guy that woke up one morning and said, oh, I'm going to be a wrestling promoter. And I went and bought a ring and did this and did that. No, I give people the respect, and I expect to get that back. It's like my locker room. I got the best locker room ever. And I know every promoter says that, but I got guys in my locker room that were trained by the late, great Harley Race. Superstar Steve Fender's been to Japan. Dennis McCausey, his ring name Attila Khan. They grew up with Harley Race. People like Trevor Murdoch. It's had a career out of this world. So when you can put on your resume that you were trained by Harley Race, that opens a lot of doors for you. And that was me with the name of Sam Muchnick, and then Cowboy Bob Orton Jr. Ran our training academy for us. I had a hand in giving Randy Orton his first job before he went to OVW, his first match. So those guys opened the doors, and I just made sure I kept my foot in it.
All right, and quick question. I know on Card Service Change you told a Harley Race story, which I enjoyed. What's another either good Harley Race story or a good Bruiser Brody story that you can tell?
I've got stories. I told one, I think, the other day on Harley. I had a barbecue business in Cahokia, Illinois. Me and two other gentlemen were in partners together. And we had a little barbecue stand, only had 6 or 7 picnic tables inside. And I had Harley coming in to do an autograph signature on a Saturday. And he was late getting there, of course, one reason or the other. But they showed up, and fans are standing inside the building. Like I said, it's a small building, but they were lined outside the door, down the street. In fact, people were parking out in the street, and the police had to come and help direct traffic because, this is Harley Race. This is the greatest of all time. And he's coming to a little old town in Illinois, Cahokia, Illinois, right outside of St. Louis, Missouri. And so, we're trying to fill orders while they're waiting. And so Harley comes in, and he's got had his wife with him, BJ, at that time before she passed away. And some of his wrestlers came with him, of course. And I got him sitting at a picnic table in there, and he's signing his autographs. And of course, if you knew Harley, he was a smoker. and like a chimney. And I had all the wrestling memorabilia on the walls in there, and we had a TV up on the wall playing via H tapes back then. And so I had a tape in playing, and Harley is sitting there with his back to the TV, and Harley never signed autographs quickly. I used to kid him about it all the time. As man, oh man, I'm going to be an old man by the time you get one done. But it had to be just right. And then people were asking him questions, and so I had one of my workers there trying to speed the line up because people are. I mean, it did good because they were ordering food while they were waiting, and they were watching the tapes. And so back then, I was a big guy. I weighed probably 450, 500 pounds, and I was up at the counter, and I happened to look up at the TV. And it's actually the match between Harley Race and Dusty Rhodes. And it was for the NWA title. And it dawned on me just that quick. Holy poop. This is the match that Dusty takes the title away from Harley. And I'm thinking, how embarrassing this is going to be. So, and I noticed Harley's kind of just, he turns around and he's looking, and he turned back around and he'd sign, and the fans are saying, oh man, do you remember when this happened? And so Harley's kind of, yeah. And so here I am, big old me, I'm trying to sneak around this small room around these picnic tables. And I get over behind him, and I just get ready to reach up to push the eject button on the TV. And I just about ready to touch the button. And he looks over and he says, big boy, if you do that, you and I are going to have a problem. And then he puts the pin down, and then he turns around and he starts calling the match. He starts telling what's going on, and the crowd's clapping, and man, they just love it. And of course, then, Dusty wins the title, and the biggest, and I'm thinking I'm going to be embarrassed. And he's actually sitting there telling the fans everything's going on about it, So, but he was a great sport about it. And that's just the type of guy he was. And of course, Bruiser Brody, so many great stories with him. I mean, he was with us the week before he got murdered back in 1988 in Cahokia, Illinois. I had another business there. It was a bar lounge. In the upstairs of it, we had turned into the Brody Lounge. And it was a place that when he was coming through town, or when we had him in for a show, he'd come in a day early and he could go there and relax, and we'd entertain him with some of our friends. And that weekend, we had our anniversary, and it was on a weekend affair, and he was with us all weekend. And but so many guys. I mean, he had a mind for the business. He'd come up with crazy things that I thought was crazy as the day was long, but boy, they would work all the time. I don't know if you ever saw the commercials in St. Louis where they had him standing up on a marquee, and he's got a lady he's holding in his arms. And in St. Louis, they called him King Kong Brody because we had Dick the Bruiser, we had Bruiser Bob Sweetan, and Sam said, too many bruisers, And then they kind of played off of that, a feud between Dick the Bruiser and Bruiser Brody, who was going to be the bruiser. But they had him up on this marquee at the St. Louis Checker Dome in St. Louis. And they were portraying it as King Kong and Fay Ray in the movie King Kong. And it took them 5 to 6 hours to get that shot because up on this it was a walkway outside the marquee, and it was so windy up there. And so he's holding, in fact, the lady, Angie, lives here in Illinois. I talk to her periodically. The lady he's holding up there, she's all dressed in the gown like Fay Ray was in the movie. And but it was so windy, the microphone that they had pinned to her dress wasn't picking up because he was talking to, hey, come and see King Kong Brody. And 5-6 hours, they kept on trying to wait till the wind blew down. And finally he said, I'm going to fix this. So he takes the microphone and clips it underneath his beard. And it acted as a shield, and filtered out the wind. And it turned out, but it took him 5 to 6 hours to figure that out. And we always razz him about that. You were just playing dumb because you didn't mind holding Angie in your arms up there. But yeah, he was always a general in my locker room. Any time I had him on a card, he helped put our matches together, and he was somebody that I could call, and we'd be on the phone late hours at night. If it wasn't with him, it was with Larry Matisek. And when I say late night, it was late night, 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. Larry and I'd still be talking, and I had to get up and go to work the next morning. Of course, he didn't get out of bed until noon, so it didn't bother him. But most of our ideas came up after midnight, and we'd always run them by Brody, and he'd give us his blessing. And the first time we brought Abdullah in a couple of times on shows with him, and I'd always heard the horror stories about Abdullah the Butcher, how he stood up promoters, he ripped them off, he did this, he did that, and to this day, he's never messed over me at all. But that one day we were planning the show, and it was going to involve Abby and Brody again, and Brody says, "Okay, you call and make the deal with Abby this time." And I said, "What?" Like I said, I'm a young guy. You want me to call Abdullah the Butcher, the guy that I've heard all these horror stories about? He'll eat me up like chopped liver. He said, "No." And he kind of laid out what I should say and how I should say it and when I should say this. And so I call Abby. And of course, it was like they had, at first, about 5 minutes into the conversation, I thought it was a rib. I thought that they had set me up, because everything that Frank had gave me to ask, Abby had the answers, but come to find out, Frank just knew him that well. And he said, now when it gets down to the point where you start talking about the money, he said he's going to try to hold you up. He's going to want you to send him half of the money down and all this and that. And it was just like clockwork. And so when he came to that point, I said, okay. I said, I'll let Frank know that you're not available for the show. And he said, Frank's going to be on the show? I said, yeah, it's going to be you and him. We're doing another angle, And he said, oh, well, tell Frank I'll be there. So, but that's when I thought, yeah, they was ribbing me. But to this day, I just was down a couple of months ago, helped Abby celebrate his 86th birthday in Atlanta. He's had some health issues, and I wish him all the well, regardless of what other promoters and workers think about him. Anytime I booked the man, he showed up. His word with his bond with me, with the fee we agreed upon. I tell the story. Out of all the 53 years that I've been in this business, he is one of maybe 2 or 3 other wrestlers that, when I always bring him in town early and we go out, have dinner or whatever. This particular incident, I had Abby in. We had him in for the Bruiser Brody Memorial. It would have been in 1980, probably 89 or 90 it was. So we brought him in, and I had Luthez, his wife, Charlie, was in, and Barbara Goodish comes in every year for that, Frank's widow. And so we had the show that Saturday night. His plane wasn't leaving until Sunday afternoon, and he had his manager with him at that time, a guy named Honest John, another nice guy. And so we all went out for early lunch. And there was probably 10 or 12 of us that went to lunch that day before I was taking him to the airport. And when it got time to go to pay the bill, I took him to a Mexican place because he wanted Mexican food. And I'd been going to this place for many, many years. And I went to pay the waitress, who I knew real well. And she said, no, the bill's already taken care of. And I thought my wife did. So I went back over and I asked the wife, I said, hey, did you get the tab? And she said, not me. She said, Jan didn't bring the ticket. Well, he had sent Honest John up to the register and paid for all of our meals. And when I tell that story to other workers in the business, they say, oh, you got to be crazy. Abby would never do anything like that. Well, I'm telling you, he did. And I mentioned that at his 86th birthday party because, like I said, he gets a bad rap like all of us do in the business. But, if you don't deserve it, I'm going to tell the truth about the guy.
Right. Herb, is there anybody you don't know?
I have literally a lot of times late at night, because like I said, I get accused of not sleeping. I still work a full-time job. I'm the mayor of my hometown for the last 50 years. And I sit on a bunch of different boards, the Mass Transit Board, the County Park District Board. But I do a lot of my thinking late night, that 2, 3, 4 o'clock early morning hours. And I have actually sit and tried to write down the names of everybody that I worked with. And it's a long, long list. And I've had people tell me you need to write a book. Well, I started about a year ago. But the problem with that, you get one chapter done and it leads into 10 more. I've got it sitting over there now, just a couple of chapters, and it's probably 500 pages. So ain't nobody going to read a 10,000 page book on Herb Simmons, but Larry Matysek always told me, he said, Herb, because I was in law enforcement, I had been a police chief, I've been a fireman, I ran an ambulance company for 35 years in East St. Louis, Illinois. So I've done a lot in my 73 years. My wife is the spark behind my knock, as I tell everybody. She's going to be 80 years old and still the love of my life. And, I got a beautiful family. I got one son that is really taken an interest in the business, because all the boys that started off as the ring crew and taking the jackets back to the dressing room. So they grew up around the business. But my one son, Jason, is really taken in fact, I got honored last year at the Cauliflower Alley Club as the promoter of the year. And my son, when we had a big entourage out there for it, and I called him up on the stage, and of course, all the workers know him because he's around. And I just said, someday the tank is going to run empty, and I would ask that you give my son Jason the same consideration you all gave me. But the flip side of that coin, if he screws up, kick him in his ass. And of course, because I've had some of the boys, grab me by the collar when I was younger and say, "What are you doing this? This don't make sense." And but no, I think he'll. He tells everybody he's got a big set of shoes he's got to fill, but at least he acknowledges that, and he don't want to get in over his head, because it's a rough business.
Oh yeah. 100% a rough business. I apologize for Yoda every time I do a show. This cat, I apologize, Herb. She's a show. I swear, anytime I talk wrestling, this cat made for the business.
That's great. Yeah,
I'm sorry.
It's like wrestling. I mean, it's the unexpected at what the fans really like. If they know what's happening, they ain't gonna like it. So if you're sitting here doing an interview and a cat jumps up there, hey, that's great. I got 100. Where's he at, Mom? Where's Bruiser at? I got 130-pound German Shepherd, and I had a Belgian Malinois we named him Brody. So I had Bruiser and Brody. And when Brody passed away a couple of years ago, but this 130-pound lap dog, Bruiser, normally he's the same way. He's usually lays by my side while I'm doing these things,
Yeah, she's always by my side. She took off running when I told her, I'm sorry, because she knows if I say that, time to leave, time to go.
Gotta go. Bye, Felicia. Bye, Felicia.
yeah. Her name's Yoda, but
okay, bye.
But anyway, so let's talk about the Fan Fest. How did that all start for the first one?
Well, it started, St. Louis never had a per se fan fest like I started. Larry Matysek and I did one back in 2012. Was kind of a fan fest. We had 22 legends in for that. So Jimmy Superfly Snuka, we had the Funks in, the Rock and Roll Express, you name it. We had everybody. Kamala, the Ugandan Giant. But they didn't have what we do now. It was more or less, there was a gentleman that was a mark for the road warriors. He wanted to be a road warrior. And so we had a wrestling ring set up at the St. Charles Convention Center, and it was a weekend deal. The guy came in, and Larry Matysek and I was the front people for it as far as promotional wise, but he was coming in, he was charging $100+ for tickets, and we tried telling him it's not going to work. Colonel Buck Robley, I don't know if you remember that name, but Colonel was the one who had contacted us and put him in touch with us. And of course, Colonel Robley was a big part of that. In fact, he ended up dying and never got paid from the guy. It was more of a come and meet and greet type thing. Bill Apter was there doing promos, and you could get your picture taken with Bill while you were doing a promo. But it just was not what we do. So, 4 years ago, my senior referee, Nick Redenauer, and I got to talking and said, St. Louis was the hub of wrestling forever. The NWA headquarters president had his offices there. And it's a shame that they had these fan fests all over the country, but St. Louis had never experienced one. And so he said, hey, why don't you do it? I'll help you, And so we put the first one on, and, we had people coming from 3 different countries then, and we ended up with about 38 states being represented. and it was at a place called the Aviator Hotel, which we did the first two there. And it since it's went out of business. I don't know if we had anything to do with that or what, but and then last year I jumped in it again, and we had it at the Hilton Hotel at the St. Louis Airport, which, keep in mind, the first two we were that 50, 60 veterans coming in, so we were making 50, 60 trips from the airport to the venue, and then on the Sunday 50 or 60 trips back. So it was a logistical nightmare because not everybody rides in on one plane coming from one place,
Right.
So it's a logistical nightmare with that. So I thought, well, let's do it at the airport. Well, it would have been okay, but then we got hit by a tornado that that evening, and it just put a damper on it. We got off okay. Kevin Von Erich had been scheduled to get there. He got stranded in Arizona. He couldn't get into St. Louis. So I took a little thump on that one. But fans did come, had a great time. The talent that came in loved it. But this year, I've lived in Illinois all my life. Like I said, I'm the mayor of my hometown here. I worked for the county as the EMA 911 executive directors. And so this year, we found the Radisson Hotel and Conference Center in Fairview Heights, Illinois, which is right off of Interstate 64, right next to the St. Clair Square Mall. A lot of shopping places, a lot of eating venues. The hotel has just been excellent to work with. They've opened their doors for us, and the mayor, the city of Fairview Heights is a sponsor of us, joined on board. So, what better way than to bring it to the fans of the St. Louis region, even though, the grandparents and the parents of the younger people may not know all about what wrestling at the Chase meant, but their parents and grandparents did. And I can't tell you how many times I hear that story. Oh, I used to sit at Grandma and Grandpa's house and we'd watch wrestling at the Chase, or we go down to the Kiel Auditorium. We had season tickets there, Larry and I actually reproduced 12 volumes of the Wrestling at the Chase tapes. I have that footage, and I have more than that, but we put 12 back then when we started doing it, which is now over 20 years, on VHS. We didn't even know what a DVD was back then. And so we reproduced them, and we were working on volume 13 when he passed away. When we were doing that, it brought back so many memories to people. Christmas Eve of the year that they came out, I was out making deliveries to people, meeting them on the McDonald's parking lots, and and I was handing out the packages. There was 3 volumes, 1, 2, and 3. And they were on VHS, and people were buying them. And, back then we were selling them $39.95 for one, and people were buying them like hotcakes. Wow. And that was a VHS tape. And then so we finally, the gentleman who had put that together, our producer, ended up getting a divorce, and what happens when you get a divorce. So Larry found another gentleman that was also his daughter's volleyball coach that had a studio, and I'll never forget the night we showed up there and was trying to make a sales pitch to him on what we needed, and he said, "How old are these tapes?" And Larry said, "Well, the oldest one we got goes back to 1962. And he says, "Oh, I can imagine what that's going to be like." And so he pulled it out, and it was in a big old black case, and he had the machines there, and he put it in, and boy, there it is, a beautiful black and white tape. Joe Garagiola, who was the first play-by-play announcer, started in 1959, is on there calling the action. Johnny Valentine was on it. Pat O'Connor against Lorenzo Parenti. So that's what got it all started. And then we just did the other 11 volumes and kind of spaced them all the way from the biggest runs go from about late 60s up to about 83. And we've had about 50 more hours of what we called the B-roll of, back then they called them jobbers, which I hate the term jobbers. Now they call them enhancement workers because that's what they are. If you don't have a good enhancement talent out there, you don't have superstars. But and when I say that, it might be a match between Roger Kirby and somebody like that, Mike George, that were big in Kansas City, where they were from when they were working for Bob Geigel and Harley Race's organization there, which was all a part of the NWA and a part of the St. Louis office. But when they came to St. Louis, they were that enhancement talent for, the Ric Flairs and the Dick the Bruisers and stuff like that to help build their careers even bigger.
Whew. Yeah. That's a lot. That is a lot. Wow. I'm sitting here being memorized when you're mentioning names, because that's what I grew. I tell people I grew up on old school wrestling like that because I was raised by my grandparents, and of course they had the tapes back then. Yeah.
Well, I've got those tapes, and I've got the Dick the Bruiser's TV library that I purchased with a friend of mine from Bruiser's wife before she passed away. In fact, Bruiser's son-in-law, if you remember the name, Spike Huber, he's coming in. He's being inducted into the St. Louis Wrestling Hall of Fame at FanFest. Him and his wife, Michelle, who was a Bruiser's daughter, are back together now, and they negotiated the deal, and they went down to Florida, picked the tapes up, and I picked them up in Memphis from them. So, but we have them locked away, and I'm slowly getting them downloaded onto DVDs now. And then on our program, we have every Sunday night SICW Championship Wrestling. We filter one of them in every now and then. We call it the Promoter's Corner. So I mix the old with the new, catch the demographics, the younger generation, and then all of a sudden you may see two of the local guys doing a match, and then we do a commercial break and come back, and then you'll see Dick the Bruiser against Ric Flair, or Baron von Raschke against Pat O'Connor. So people go, whoa, this is cool. I always tell everybody, Vince ought to came up with that idea with all the videos that he's got in the libraries. Instead of just sitting it there, give it to me. I'll show him how to use it.
Well, yeah, it's just basically sitting there collecting dust.
Since we're talking about this tremendous tape library, I have a question that I wanted to ask on Card Subject to Change. I asked this of a lot of the younger talent that we interview over on Card. If you were to show a match to someone who is not familiar or who's just kind of getting the idea of they maybe want to start wrestling, what is the one match that you show them to get them hooked?
Nature Boy Buddy Rogers against Pat O'Connor in Kaminsky Park in 1962 in front of 30,000 fans. Yeah, and if they watch that, and if they don't learn the psychology of wrestling, then they don't need to be in the business.
I love that answer. I love that.
That is a great answer. Well, what can fans expect coming into this fan fest?
They can expect, a lot of these fans travel to these fan fest all over. I mean, I just came back a few weeks ago. I was up in Chillicothe, Ohio for my good friend Bobby Fulton. Had his big show up there. Bobby did a lot of work, him and Tommy Rogers for me. Bruiser Brody had brought them in for me back then, and we've kept the relationship going. And Bobby went through a lot of health issues over the last few years, and I was glad to see him. And he invited me up to do him and his son to do their TV play-by-play farm for their big show. And then a couple weeks after that, I went up to Indianapolis to the big fan fest up there and met Brian Blair. That was our vice president of the Cauliflower Alley Club, Rich Engling, God rest his soul. He had passed away. And Brian Blair, who is the president and CEO of the Cauliflower Alley Club. And if you guys aren't familiar with that, I highly recommend you become a member of that for about $36 a year. And if you can ever go to Vegas, we have our annual reunion out there every year. This is our 60th year. And you talk about a place to network. Man, oh man, that's where it's at. But I went to Indianapolis because Brian was up there during that time. And one of the other board members from the Cauliflower Alley Club had told me that Brian was up there at that show. And so we didn't want him to be up there because him and Rich were friends for 40 years. And so I made the trip up there. But, they had several thousand people throughout that Saturday that I was up there. And So these fans travel from one place to another. Like right now, I think when I checked at the hotel, we've got representations from about 27 different states and 2 countries that's already booked rooms and purchased tickets. So I think they're going to be able to expect what they have over the last 3. We get a lot of repeat business with a new venue over on the Illinois side. I expect it will pick up a lot more of our local followers because it's real easy to get to. And of course, I don't know if you follow me that much on social media, but we're the social media kings when it comes to promoting this stuff. And my locker room, everybody. We've got newspaper ads, we got TV ads coming out. A lot of people want to do it, 8, 9, 10, 12 weeks out. Well, people forget about it then. So, we're in that push mode right now. The next, in fact, we're doing a countdown. I think there's 23 days left. But each day I'm putting up like today was Bill DeMont. I don't know if you know that name or not, Hugh Morris. He was on the flyer today. And so, each day it's just kind of like we do the Bruiser Brody Battle Royal every year. And I think we've got up to 14 entrants that's been announced already. And we'll end up with about 21, 22 people in that Battle Royal. And Barbara Goodish comes in every year and awards the big trophy cup to the winner. JBL is going to be there. Another big Mick Foley will be there that Friday night doing his one-man show, and then a private meet and greet after that. If you want to go have a few minutes with him and listen to him, but he does his show, and that'll start on that Friday night at 6:00, and after that, immediately the meet and greet, and then 10:00 the next morning it all starts, and we'll all be running around like chickens with our head cut off. But the fans I think they will be entertained to the point where we've got about 20 plus vendors that have already signed up. They'll be there selling their goods, and a couple of podcast people are there that broadcast each year live. So there's a lot for everybody to do. The Fan Fest will run from 10 in the morning on Saturday till about 5. And then we do the St. Louis Wrestling Hall of Fame induction. We started that many years ago. We've got 60 some people that we put in there. And when I talk about important people, there's no limousine drivers. We do have movie stars. Everybody say, well, Vince got movie star. Well, Terry Funk was a member of our Hall of Fame, and he starred in the movie Roadhouse, so we covered that base. But I don't think we have a chauffeur that we'll be putting in there. But we're inducting 3 members this year. Johnny Rods, I don't know if you're familiar with that name, but man's 86 years old, in the gym every day, training the new generation of wrestlers. And if you just go Google him, I had somebody post on my page tonight, we don't know who this guy is. He don't belong in a Hall of Fame. And of course I said, Google him and then make your determination.
Yeah.
And then of course, Andre the Giant is being inducted. There's a gentleman, I don't know if you're familiar with Chris Owens, has the large collection of memorabilia of Andre's, and great guy. Chris is awesome. And he's been with us, I think 3 of the 4 years that we've done this. And we were hoping to get Robin, Andre's daughter, to come in. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but one way or the other, Chris will be there with his collection, and then he will partake in the induction. And because he's done so much work on keeping the memories of Andre alive, he'll be accepting that award on behalf of Andre. Because, the 8th wonder of the world, anywhere he went, he was it, And then the third one is Spike Huber, the son-in-law of Dick the Bruiser, who not only done a lot of work for wrestling in St. Louis, but he worked for the WWF for a while, did a lot of work for SICW, and it's fitting that he goes in the Hall of Fame also.
Well, I tell you, that's got me really excited too. I'm kind of baffled all that's happening. I know myself, I know CZ and Nick's going to be there. We got a couple other friends coming with us. But before we wrap up, Herb, I always ask this with our guest on here. If someone is trying to get into this business, what is the biggest piece of advice you would give them, and why would you give that advice to them?
Well, I think the biggest piece of advice I can get is, because I get people, and I'm not exaggerating, every week, anywhere from 3 to half a dozen inquiries of people wanting to come to SICW. And our training school is kind of on a hiatus right now because of the building that they were using. Had some changes going on there. So once they get the new building up and going, Cowboy Bob Orton Jr. runs that academy with some of my guys in the locker room. The Big Texan is a guy that goes down there and works with them, and Sean Vincent, the Canadian hero, and a bunch of boys in the locker room would come down and roll around with the new guys while Bob sits there on a Tuesday and Thursday nights and teaches them the psychology. Because there's a guy that was on the first WrestleMania, and his father to Randy Orton, his father Bob Orton Sr. We inducted into the Hall of Fame many years back, and then last year we inducted Bob into the Hall of Fame, and Randy actually came in and did the induction of them. So I had promoters from around the country. Hey, how did you get Randy Orton to come in and get in the ring and do the induction? I said, well, I helped him with his first match before he went to OVW, and plus it's his dad we're inducting. So, and Randy's response was, "It's my dad, I'm coming." So it was really a treat for us to have Randy a part of last year's show. It was actually a year before that. I'm sorry. I keep getting as you get older, sometimes things like that slip by you. But and they all run in. Like I said, we put this whole thing together in 2 weeks. I had to, and I tell everybody, Jerry Briscoe and JBL were two of the big twisters of my arm, and another gentleman runs a great podcast, Tony Richards. I don't know if you are familiar with Tony, but Tony was really instrumental in saying, "Hey, Herb, you got to do it. I'm going to come in." And so I had to go and find a hotel, and we did. And so it gets scary because all the stars are aligning, and here we're getting this close out. I'm thinking I'm checking all the boxes, and you're trying to get airfare for all these talents, and making sure the matches are getting put together. I named Teddy Long the general manager for SICW, so he's helping out do some of that, and we've already announced some of those matches. Got a girls match, Tootie Ramsey. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but she just came back from a tour in Japan. She started off years ago with me at a show for a fire department. Most of our work we do is for fundraisers for fire departments, police departments, nonprofit organizations, and she showed up at one of those cards, and now she's a little girl, but the old saying, dynamite comes in small packages. She's sure there, but she's going to have her work cut out for her because she's going against a 6'8" Lilith Khan, the spawn of Khan. And but what Tootie is going to lack in height, she will make up in speed and powerful force. So that's the ladies' match. I let the cat out of the bag last week, and the Pyre Pain is going to be there. Barbarian and Warlord, they're going to be in action. We announced a match, Tommy Wildfire Rich and Dangerous Doug Gilbert taking on Attila Khan and the manager, leader of Devastation Incorporated, Stephen E. The manager will be in action that night, and everybody's wanting to see him get annihilated. And so we'll end up with 8 or 9 matches on card, which normally we only run 7. But this is kind of our little mini mania. We don't try to compete with anybody. We're just trying to bring the fans the best in professional wrestling and flavor in the Hall of Fame. We'll have the television on playing the old Wrestling at the Chase tapes, and the vendors will be there. The hotels handling all the concessions. I like it because it's all at one place. You don't have to go from one venue to another. Makes it really good for the guests.
Absolutely. Well, Herb, we appreciate your time here. Thank you so much. Folks, you can check out ICCW. We're going to put the link in the description. We're also going to put not only the QR code, but we're going to put the Card Subject Change link with Herb that they had just a few days ago. So, Herb, since I mentioned that, where can they find the promotion? Aside,
well, everybody tells me I'm the easiest guy to find on social media. I'm only on Facebook. Basically, I do a little bit on TikTok, not a whole bunch, but Facebook's where I live at basically, and the SICW.org is the website. You can go on there. We have a webmaster, Eric, that keeps that updated for us and does a fantastic job. And that's where all the latest information is posted, or on my site. If you're not friends with me, send me a request, and I'll vet you. And like I said, I usually don't turn down anybody. If you get anything to do about wrestling, we're friends. And and like I said, I'm posting something every day, or my people are. We got to kind of get a schedule of what we release every day, and then I filter things in when I want to. So. But that's the easiest way, SICW.org.
Well, thank you, Herb. All right, CZ, tell them where they can find you at. Work your magic here, Wizard.
You can find me at CSTC Podcast on most social medias. Card Subject Change Podcast on Facebook. Check us out on YouTube. Definitely check out our interview with Herb Simmons. We had a lot of fun then. We had a lot of fun tonight. Thank you, Herb. We appreciate it. Joe?
Sorry I got so long-winded, but like I said, when you ask easy questions, I can give you the easy answers.
Hey, that's all. Hey, I was just sitting under the learning tree and enjoying the stories, so we're good.
We'll
have no need to apologize for telling great stories.
Anytime you got an opening and you want a filler, just give me a call. And like I said, as long as my mind stays intact, I don't mind sharing them, because that's what everybody tells me. If you don't start documenting some of this stuff, it's going to be a loss. And they're right. I mean, hopefully you recorded this tonight, so you'll have that to keep forever. Yeah. So, but I appreciate the invite.
No problem at all, Herb. Folks, thank you all so much for watching. If you haven't liked, subscribe, share this out, please, because this channel is all about keeping professional wrestling history alive. I'm Joe Monroe for the Wizard CZ, and I want to say the great Herb Simmons after this interview. We'll catch you later.
Good night.